This week, we welcome Padraic O'Reilly, founder and chief innovation officer at CyberSaint, to discuss the unique challenges of AI risks. In our second segment, we air a pre recorded interview with Shibu George, engineering product manager at Outshift by Cisco from February 12th, 2024. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Panoptica, Cisco's cloud application security solution, provides end-to-end lifecycle protection for cloud-native application environments. It empowers organizations to safeguard their APIs, serverless functions, containers, and Kubernetes environments. Panoptica ensures comprehensive cloud security, compliance, and monitoring at scale, offering deep visibility, contextual risk assessments, and actionable remediation insights for all your cloud assets. Get more information at securityweekly.com/Panoptica.
Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 339, recorded February 26, 2024. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining remotely for this interview segment today are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? It's kind of it's crazy not being able to talk football, but you want to know what? My Celtics are at the top of the Eastern Conference and Bruins are at the top of the Atlantic Division, so I'll throw some basketball and hockey in there. Why not?
Why not? Boston's doing well these days in both of those sports. Their football team, however, not so much.
Womp, womp.
Also joining today's filling in for Mr. Ben Carr is Mr. Josh Marpet. Josh, love to have you on.
I love being on Business Security Weekly. Anytime, just give a yell. I'm happy to be on any. Great show.
Last time, I think Patty was on, you were on, so this is going to be interesting because we're going to talk AI risks here in a second, and I know you'll have some great questions for Patty here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2024 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place May 6th to May 9th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC24 and use the brand new simplified code 54USECWeekly. Way better than that other thing I was reading for weeks. We hope to see you there. This segment is sponsored by CyberSaint. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/CyberSaint. Padraic O'Reilly is no stranger to Business Security Weekly. He is the founder and chief innovation officer at CyberSaint. Padraic's an expert in artificial intelligence and economic modeling who works with members of the Global 500 to research and deploy risk quantification, risk intelligence gathering, and risk reporting communication strategies. Padraic also holds a patented titled System and Method for Monitoring and Grading a Cybersecurity Framework, which uses AI to enhance crosswalking of frameworks, automation of control scoring, and eventually a real-time recommendation engine. He is also my partner in crime at CyberSaint. Patty, welcome back to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here. Always great to be on Business Security Weekly. Love the velocity and liveliness of the discussions here. Love it.
Yes. And like I said, you are my partner in crime. I
Yes.
pick that brain of yours every single day on how do we do things better. So it's always fun.
Yep. Well, I leverage your organizational genius as well. So it's a two-way street.
All right. So we're going to talk about AI risks. NIST about a year ago published the NIST AI RMF Framework. And I want to use that as the basis for the conversation and the discussion. But before we dig into what is the NIST AI framework, let's start with what are you hearing in the industry right now around AI? What are people looking for? Kind of what's the latest on the street around AI risks?
Yeah, well, the latest on the street, if you count the press and the amount of just interviews I did, is deepfake tech, right? So everyone's, up in arms about it, confused about it, don't quite understand what, how it comes to be, what it's used for. So, there's a couple of really good recent deepfake examples. One was Biden, in New Hampshire, robocalls. It was generated by a small AI concern. And then just leveraged by sort of a political hack, basically. Then there was Slovakia, where the progressive candidate was deepfaked. And this is kind of funny because this could lose you the entire island of Ireland if you deepfake this. He was deepfaked talking about doubling the prices of beer just before the election, which, they have a 48-hour window there that you can't say anything before the election in 48 hours. So it was impossible to counter as well. So I think deepfakes is the biggest concern right now. And that, with respect to the regulation, that goes to the whole issue of watermarking, right? And how the regulators look at watermarking, how you look at the actual source of a video or an audio, and how you market to, ideally prevent some of the, worst case scenarios around deepfaking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think two of the really good use cases for generative AI is content, i.e. voices, and images and video, which obviously is also a way to generate this stuff. Are those primarily where we're seeing the biggest use of Gen AI for these types of concerns, or are there other potential use cases out there, Patty?
Yeah, well, there's other stuff going on, right? I mean, I was just working with OpenAI this weekend, asking it to summarize some things for me to put into a framework. There's a lot of text content being generated already. Some of the QA around that, some of the socio-political implications of those products are also, areas of active discussion. And then when it comes to video generation, they just, OpenAI just announced their new Sora, module. And you can see there was a big political dust-up last week about Gemini, right? Where Elon Musk and Jordan Peterson managed to get Gemini to say some ridiculous things about how it won't generate images of white founders. We're generating images of, sort of racially, ethnically diverse founders, which our founders were not here, all that ethnically diverse. So you're beginning to see some really interesting, the politicization of the outputs of AI is definitely in play as well at the moment. And that goes to an area of AI risk management that's very important, right? Which is how do you, deal with protected groups? How do you deal with, AI that, has bias sort of built into it? And that gets into some of the whole will generative and AI manufacturers or providers, will they enjoy protection under what's known as, Section 230? Which, currently some of the internet providers and some of the big social media platforms enjoy protection under. So there's a lot going on, a lot.
I mean,
there's also, I was just going to say, there's also some monetary effect happening right now. I mean, I just read an article, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about a finance worker paying almost $26 million because of a video deepfake where they literally had a Zoom meeting of the CFO and a bunch of different colleagues within the same company on the Zoom meeting, and there was only one person, that finance worker, who was real. The rest were all deepfakes, and that finance worker paid out $26 million to these threat actors.
Yeah. Well, he didn't. Okay, so to be clear, Jason, he didn't know that they were threat actors. They were deepfaking as his CFO, his CEO, and various C-level people, and they said, "We need to make a payment. We need you to do it right now." That sense of urgency that's common in every scam. And so go do this payment. Here's the bank account number. Here's the routing number. Here's the wire information. Make it now. And he did, because there's his CEO, there's his CFO, there's everybody he says, who would signing off on that. And that was bad. But I've got to go back, Patty. I mean, one thing you said that I've got to sort of push back on slightly is that we've got to deal with AI with bias and the results of AI with bias. And how do we deal with that? We've always had to deal with that. Every AI result is biased in some form or fashion. Is any listener, any viewer, anybody here or after the fact can tell me a data set that they've got that was 100% clean and neat and done and normalized and without bias the first time they get it? Because I don't see any hands up.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know that I don't know that I have a very strong opinion about that yet. Because bias is natural to these systems,
right.
And it's not even.
And I'm not pushing back on you.
It's not even. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That you're pushing back on the idea that you can, in the near term, sort of perfectly deal with the issue of bias as it relates to. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, we can't get it out of the data. So you're right. We have to figure out how to deal with it, but we've been having to figure out how to deal with it. It's not as if it suddenly appeared out of thin air. Bias is inherent in all data sets.
Yeah, but Josh, isn't this exponentially worse now because of AI becoming so pervasive and so leaned on? I mean, the tools are better now, right? So I think the risk goes up.
I hear you and I agree with you, but I think there's also a factor of I'm slightly more worried. I mean, okay, so I'm worried about bias. It's going to screw with a lot of people. It's going to screw with a lot of organizations. It's going to do very, very bad things. But I'm more worried about the fact that it has zero human judgment. Okay, so and the fact that there's so many different things that people are trying, so many different jobs and occupations and pieces of workflow that that people are depending on and use, and without human interaction or without human judgment, without the ability to go, oh, this is a special circumstance, let me figure out some way of making this work. That's going to really screw with a lot of people and a lot of ability to handle issues.
Yeah. Yes. And certainly one of the main NIST holds it all under trustworthiness. And the last category in trustworthiness is fair, with harmful bias managed. So I don't, they don't say eliminated, they say managed, but you guys are making a really good point. As this proliferates and the amount of outputs goes through the roof, how do you manage that?
Yeah. And the amount of dependency goes through the roof. I mean, I've already seen my kids on social media, and some of these social media apps are putting out little AI chatbots, right?
Yeah.
And they start using it. So now our younger generation is starting to build a dependence on using AI as a tool. So that creates even higher risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Patty, you started to go down the path a little bit with the NIST AI framework. With fairness, right? But the framework calls out other types of AI risks as well. And so I want to kind of think about, all right, we see this going on, deep fakes, we see these opportunities where AI is being used. How does the AI framework get used to try to identify and mitigate some of these risks? We'll talk about quantification later because I'm not sure we're quite there yet on that front. But let's just talk about, what does a framework do to help organizations start to at least identify, analyze, and figure out what to do with some of these risks?
Right. So the basic idea, it takes the old structure from the CSF, which is to have some high level functions. So it's got govern as sort of the highest level function. So it's a lot like the CSF that way. So the first thing it does is it says, essentially, you have to have governance involved in this. You're probably not going to make a lot of progress if you didn't. And the real jump from CSF 1.1 to 2.0 was pulling out governance out of identified and making it its own function, just to sort of promote it and make it more important. Then you've got, other categories, other functions, map, measure, and govern cuts across all of them. So you've got all of these other that, it really gets into, looking at how you build it first, what you're putting into the model, what data, what you want the model to do. Map is really about social context as well. So you're trying to sort of not just identify what the outputs are going to do for the immediate users, but what is the social context for that product. You can imagine there's so many different kinds of models in play. There's business specific applications. Those are very unique applications. They're very narrow. They might be just on, a particular sort of suggestion engine around recommending which customers to, send a bunch of emails to, defined basically on some trigger events. So, then there's models like the ones we see operating now, which are gigantic and cut across a lot of different social contexts. So the model attempts to be really flexible. Govern is at the center of it. Measure, so you kind of identify the risks, and you have a way to sort of analyze and track them. Then you manage, which is prioritizing and looking at a sort of a projected impact. That gets into what you were referring to, Matt, which gets a little tricky because NIST states straight out that actually measuring risk with respect to AI systems is really early days, and I tend to agree with that. And map is really about context. So that's the basic structure. They try to be non-prescriptive. They're trying to provide a way to begin doing this, the risk management part of it, but they freely admit that it's early days. And if you look at the other AI initiatives that are out there, it's still early days, maybe outside of the EU, which is going to go live with the AI Act sometime in the spring.
Yeah. Just to tether in a little bit, Patty, how does this align with what the administration came out with for the AI Bill of Rights? Because Congress is the one who actually said to NIST, listen, we want you to take the lead on this.
Yeah.
We all know how administration and Congress aren't always aligned. Are there gaps between what the administration has put out there for that AI Bill of Rights and this NIST framework?
Yeah, I think the AI Bill of Rights and the Hiroshima process with the G7, they're kind of eyeing eventual regulation. So the AI Bill of Rights and some of the products of the Biden administration of late have gone a little deeper and suggested, even deeper sort of sets of things to look at for analysis. NIST is really kind of in the middle ground right now, trying to provide organizations with a risk management framework. It's not, again, prescriptive. So you don't see anything specific in there about watermarking or data privacy. It's very general still. So, whereas some of the stuff that Biden's coming out with, the Biden administration and the Hiroshima process, they're starting to dig in around, what can be regulated in the future. That's still a hugely moving target.
I think one of the big, I think one of the big differences is that NIST has transparency, which is one of the core values they have in their risk framework that I absolutely love. And the idea of transparency being that you can actually see what data is being used to come to that conclusion. Every AI system right now is pretty much a closed black box. But if you can see what data is being used, you can understand why. I'm sorry, go ahead, Patty.
No, they do. They talk about that specifically at the AI RMF transparency. They call it opacity. because one of the one of the issues around AI and AI researchers and machine learning researchers talk about it all the time. They're obsessed with it. Is they don't even know what's happening inside the model. Sometimes, these models get so complex that a lot of their behavior becomes somewhat mysterious. So, yeah.
And now, when NIST developed this risk management framework, they did it with a diverse set of contributors and stakeholders. Correct? This wasn't in a silo. Just NIST. They opened it up to private companies and public sector and really diversity there, right?
Yes, they did. They did, and they will continue to. So they've been pretty clear that this is just the first, iteration of it. But yeah, there was a comments period. I've read through a lot of the comments. They always do that. They try to get, many thousands of participants that helps them. I think it just helps the validity of the exercise as well, because it's effectively crowdsourced.
I'm going to say that one of the other things is that both the AI blueprint, the AI Bill of Rights, the blueprint, and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework are not operationalizable. They are, in my opinion, I'm curious to hear what you think, Patty, but I think that they're wonderful starting framework, but there's nothing you can really operationalize right now.
It's early days. I would agree with you. Like, for example, we recently were working with a very large partner who said they didn't have, any way to get, AI governance data into their system. And at one other side of their house has some AI governance data, sort of looking at models, model drift, the protections around privacy, what you put in the model, data-wise. It's still early days. There really are not a hardened set of practices around this. I would say, though, Josh, that there is some crossover. Say you can take the AI NIST privacy framework and take the NIST AI RMF framework and Venn diagram them, and you can take a chunk of the privacy framework out immediately and apply it to AI for sure.
I agree. And I like the way that they're doing that. They're really making them so that they're in a standard, is it format, in a standard sort of way, so that you can actually just keep implementing them and keep going and building them into, if you will, the same spreadsheet and keep on building out. I have to say, I really like it. And I'm looking forward to talking to Sunil Yu. Do you know the Cyber Defense Matrix?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I'm looking forward. Sunil Yu is a friend of mine. He built the Cyber Defense Matrix. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does when because he built that out for just a straight up CSF. And I'm looking forward to seeing if he's going to do it for AI risk management as well, because I think it's extremely applicable to that. So I've poked him a couple of times. When are you working on it? I haven't gotten anything back.
See if he gets it in there. Yeah. I mean, NIST has really done a good job taking the basic structure of this kind of framework. Make function, category, subcategory. Subcategory is a mandate. It's broad, non-prescriptive, but subcategories can then be populated with informative references. So you've got this nice structure, and all of the NIST products that are frameworks, they all have it.
Yeah, Patty, when I was doing research, sorry, Josh, I was doing research for this segment, I also looked at the original kind of source OECD framework, right? Because I was trying to figure out the same thing. Like, how do you operationalize this? Because again, you said it at the high level, it says govern. Okay, well, what controls do I need? Well, I need policies and procedures in place. Okay, check. I got a couple controls under govern to put some policies and procedures around using AI, right?
Right.
I simplified it drastically, but you get my point. Then I started thinking about, well, then you have to map it, measure it, manage it, right? And so I was trying to figure out what controls would apply into the model. And so OECD does a pretty good job in their framework looking at an AI system, right? Because I'm thinking, what types of controls would I look at? Well, I have controls at the data level, right? So if
Right.
I think about my data controls, I need those because of the data and the input and some of the privacy and security around data. So this is where
Yes.
the privacy framework, maybe some of the other data security controls out of 853 could be applied to the data component, right? And then I look at the model, right? So the model is an algorithm. It leverages data, but what potential applicable controls could be applied to the model itself? And
Right.
then this gets deployed on a set of systems, right? So now I'm
Right.
thinking about, well, what are some of the system level controls that I could pull in as part of this? So I was trying to piece this together. Am I heading down
Yeah.
the right path?
You are. You
No.
are. Yeah. I mean, I think that. No. Well, no. I'll let No go first. Yeah.
These are not meant to be security control framework. These are
No, I
risk
don't.
management framework, risk measurement frameworks. They're not meant to have controls, effectively procedural controls, prescriptive controls built into them. They are measurement frameworks. They are management and monitoring. Now, can you
Yes,
link them
but
to a control framework? Yes, but
yeah,
you got to understand, you're supposed to have a risk management framework and a security control framework, not one
yes.
doing both.
No. I agree with
Yeah.
you. No, but if I'm thinking about what are the compensating controls that I have to put in
That's fine.
place to mitigate the
That's
risk,
fine.
that's why I'm thinking like, how do you link this stuff together, Josh?
Right.
That makes
Right.
sense, but I just wanted to
And
be clear, and I apologize, I'm nitpicking. I'm sorry.
no, and you're not. No, I think you're both right, and I think Matt, the way you're going at it, a lot of the AI, governance research, and a lot of the AI researchers refer to two kinds of risk. Just to keep it really simple: input risk, output risk. Two kinds, right? You can look at a lot of the risk management framework is relating to input risk or output risk. The actual, are there controls, that exist for model drift? Are there controls that exist for some of the funny things that can happen inside models? Not really. It's still early days on that. Are there controls that arguably could be associated with the output risk? Yeah, absolutely. If your AI is, trying to change elections and things like that, those output risks are real. I mean, and it's still unknown as to the provenance, whether or not they're going to be held accountable for that in the long run. Different providers have different opinions. Input risk, I think, is probably best understood with respect to controls at the moment, because we do have, entire families in NIST 853 and other control frameworks that relate to privacy-based risks. It's again, the model to allow for the association of controls to it, just like the CSF is, but like Josh says, it starts at the high level of risk, right? So, what you do to mitigate risk throughout the model can be eventually drilled down to the control, but it needn't be to start.
Yeah, and I think Matt, to your point, NIST is already starting to do that. So if you look at the companion documents to the AI RMF, it has an AI RMF crosswalk, and that crosswalk goes against OECD, against the EU AI Act, against 13960. So, and hey, look, the AI Bill of Rights. So they're starting to think the way you're thinking, Matt.
Yeah, because
And
right now go ahead, Josh.
Go ahead. Okay, so I wanted to point out that input and output risks are great for model development. Input and output risks are great for AI developers or in that sort of community. But on the business side, I wrote acceptable use policies for a lot of companies about AI, and I categorize the risk as the input risk, the output risk, the training data risk. I'm sort of bashing the idea, and third party risk, because with from the business side, from the user side of these AI, there are more categories of.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah, and I didn't even attempt to talk about whether it's a private LLM, a public LLM, or personal, right? Like there's some interesting Venn diagrams. I think it's in the OECD framework. If you're using public AI systems, like there's a whole kind of series of risks over there. But Patty, where I was going next is the quantification piece. This is where I think things are really difficult right now. Like the best we could probably do is a qualitative risk analysis for some of these AI risks, because we don't have enough information to quantify them yet? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I do think it's fair. And I think NIST says the same thing and say it's really early days on quantification. It's like, 2016, 2017, you went to these conferences, Matt, when the CSF was opening up the discussion around measurement, right? How do you measure information security in some ways? And that was a real food fight. It's settled out a little bit in the interim, since, but I think it's very early days on quantifying AI risk, because you've definitely got legal risk involved. You've got fines and judgments that will come later on. You have reputational risk. You have the risk that, the social context around the outputs will have far-reaching consequences. Just, sort of the blast radius is way wider than some of the current risk models we have. So I think the brains in the jar are going to have to look at that for a bit of time to come up with ways to quantify it. But to start, probably it will be the old fall back on some of the old qualitative risk models, at least initially.
Do you think some of what NIST is trying to do right now as far as soliciting feedback, because they talk a lot about wanting to create specific profiles around sector, around workflows, around tasks, and they want that tailored guidance. Do you think that's to help with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, profiles is a concept that's native to the CSF as well. So it's, again, a part of their non-prescriptive mandate. It's a recognition that each organization, each sector is going to have a different set of ideas around how to implement this, and different set of issues. So some categories or subcategories are going to be more or less important. Some categories and subcategories might not be weighted the same way. So, you see it in operation with the Financial Sector Coordinating Council and, the Cyber Risk Institute releasing their sector-specific financial profile for the CSF. So, the concept of profiles, they bake that in fully here, because you're going to have models, that are, again, just looking at trigger events to when to send, a particular promotion to someone. It's going to have a very different set of risks involved than, a model that generates video, or a model that generates, vast amounts of text or analysis of various things. So you just as models are going to be scaled differently and have different applications, you're going to need different approaches with respect to the RMF. And NIST recognizes that, and that's where they really use that concept of profiles, differing profiles per model, per sector, and so forth.
Awesome. Gentlemen, any other questions for Patty while we have him?
Good to go on my side.
Oh, man. Awesome. Patty, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, always, gents, and look forward to next time we're all chatting. Thank you.
Yes, Patty, as always, thank you for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Take care, everyone.
To identify your top 5 security risks, sign up for a free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/CyberSaint. We're going to take a quick break and then air our pre-recorded interview with Shibu George.